So now we're at truth tables. What is a truth table? Well, it's just an easy way to look at what we did in that past video. Instead of writing every single thing out, I can make a quick truth table and then decide, well, is this going to be true or false in my value? So let's talk first about what it means to negate. Well, so P, this is if P, this is not P. So it's the opposite. The opposite of true is false. The opposite of false is true. Okay, so now I have this conjunction. Remember, a conjunction's an and statement, meaning both statements must be true. So what is my truth value? If I have a true and a true, both of them are right, so that means that's a true value. One is true, one is not true, that's going to give me a false truth. I have a false and a truth. Remember, both of these have to be the same in order for a conjunction to take place. Because these are different, that's a false truth. Now here, both of them are false, so both of them have to be false too. If one's false, the other's false, well, there is no truth in that. So when you have a conjunction, both of those statements have to be true in order for it to fulfill my truth value. Now a disjunction is or, so only one of them has to be true. So if both of them are true, well, then it's still a true value. Remember, only one of these has to be true, so that's true. Only one of them has to be true, so that's true. Both of them are false, that provides a false statement, okay? So make sure you understand that. And now when we go to our truth tables, if I have, so this is asking P or not R. Well, the easiest thing we do on a truth value is first we're going to list if P and R, and then we're going to list not R. And then we're going to decide on if this statement is true or false. Remember, this is an or statement right here. So only one of these values has to be true. Okay, so stick with me. So if P is true, then R could be true. That's a possibility. If P is true, then R could be false. If P is false, then R could be true. And if P is false, then R could be false. So I've listed all the different varieties that could happen in that situation. So I could have a P and an R. I could have a P and an R being false. So that's how I get my list. Now, I write this statement because if it's not R, so if R is true, not R would be false. If R is false, then not R would make it true. If R is true, then not R would make it false. And if R is false, then not R would make it true. All it does is it switches them. It switches that truth statement. So now I'm going to compare. Remember, it has to be an or statement, so only one of these needs to be true. So look what I'm comparing here. My statement says I'm comparing this column and this column. So remember, only one of them needs to be true. P is true, not R is false. Because this one's true, my truth value table is true. Does that make sense? Let's compare these. When they're both true, well, that's good. That's a truth value. Both of these are false, so it's going to produce a false over here. And only one of them has to be true. Not R is true, so that's what my truth value table looks like. Okay? All right, I'm not going to do all of these, but I want you to see how I'm doing them. So I'm going to look at number 4. So remember, first I want to make my original P and R, and then I'm going to do not P and not R, because that was simple to kind of go back and look at the opposites of those. So in my original statement, if P is true, R could be true. If P is true, R could be false. If P is false, R could be true. And if P is false, then R could be false as well. Right? Now I'm going to negate everything. So I'm looking here. Well, true, the negating would be false. True, the negating would be false. False, the negating would be true. And false, the negating would be true. So I've just swapped those opposites here. Now I look at my R is true, so not R would make it false. If R is false, not R would make it true. If R was true, not R would make it false. And if R was false, not R would make it true. Okay? Now, I want to compare not P and not R. So I'm looking at these two columns. Remember, an and statement, both of them need to be true. Both of them need to be true. So these are both false, so that's going to produce a false statement. A false and a true gives me a false statement. A true and a false gives me a false statement. A true and a true, both of them have to be true. That gives me a true statement. So out of all these combinations, there's only one truth value right here. Okay? All right, let's look at some bigger ones. Ooh, these kind of look scary. All right, so let's look at this back one, and I'm going to do this one here. All right, so let's look at number 6. Okay, so I've got a P, a Q, and an R. So I'm going to be looking at P, Q, and R. So P can be true, Q can be true, and R can be true. That's one combination. If P is true and Q is true, R could be false. If P is true, Q could be false, and R could be true. If P is true, Q could be false, and R could be false. Okay? So now I'm going to look at, so I've listed all the combinations where P could be true. So P could be false, Q could be true, and R could be true. P could be false, and Q could be true, and R could be false. P could be false, Q could be false, and R could be true. And P could be false. I'm missing. Oh yeah, and now they could all be false. False and false. All right, so those are the different combinations. Sometimes the hardest part is coming up with those combinations. All right, so I've listed the combinations, and now I'm going to look at this one first. Q and R. So remember, I'm going to compare Q and R. It's an and statement, so both of those have to be true. Both of them have to be true. So here's Q and R. Both true, that's a true statement. One of them's false, so it's a false statement. One of them's false, it's a false statement. False statement, both true, so this is a true statement. Not true, that one's false, and that one's false. So there's only two truth statements that are true. Okay? Now I'm going to be comparing, I'm going to be comparing P or Q and R. So now I'm comparing this column with this column, remembering it's an or statement, so only one of those has to be true. So if I have this one, both are true, so that's a true statement. True and a false, so that's a true statement. True and a false, so that's a true statement. True and a false, so that's a true statement. False and a true, remember only one has to be true, and that's true, so it's a T. False and a false is false. False and a false is false. False and a false is false. Okay? So lots of combinations, but that's how you work them out in a table. So if you have questions on this or want to practice some more on the truth table, come and see me.